Hi readers! So before we start the show, I have a quick ask. Will you pretty please rate and review the show if you like it? I mean, if you don't like it, well, that's your choice. But if you do like it, rating and reviewing helps other people find the show. So if you take a few seconds and hit those 5 stars, that helps. And if you take a minute to write something nice about the show, that will help even more. So thank you in advance. And alrighty, now on to the episode. Hello, I'm Victoria from BiblioLifestyle, and you're listening to the Reader's Couch podcast, the show that will help you bridge the gap between living a full and busy life to one where you're reading, learning new things, and having fun. In today's episode, I will be sharing 6 new books across genres to read this winter. So if you're looking to add some great books to your TBR, stay tuned. So I have a quick question to ask you. Have you ever thought about starting a reading habit? Or maybe you're a once in every blue moon type of reader, but you want to be more consistent and maintain a reading habit. Or maybe you're an avid reader, but you're interested in having a more intentional and fulfilling reading life. Does that sound like you? If any of those scenarios sound like you in even the slightest, I want to invite you to take the What's Your Reader Type quiz. It will only take 60 seconds of your time and you'll discover your reader type. But most importantly, you'll get the resources you need to start reading, maintain the habit, and get intentional. So visit readertypequiz.com. That's readertypequiz.com. It will only take you 60 seconds and you'll discover your reader type and get the resources you need. So whether you're an aspiring or avid reader, go to readertypequiz.com, spend 60 seconds and take the quiz that will help you get clear on where you are right now and what you need to do to live your best reading and literary life yet. Well, hello there and welcome to another episode of the Reader's Couch podcast. Today, I will be sharing 6 new books from across genres to read this winter. So if you're looking to add some great books to your TBR, this episode is just for you. Now, the 6 books I'll be sharing with you today are from the 2023 BiblioLifestyle Winter Reading Guide. So if you're hearing about the Winter Reading Guide for the very first time, it's a free downloadable PDF guide that I create, sharing some of the best new books of the season, along with some fun things to do at home, winter-themed recipes, and of course, tips to help improve your reading life. So if you haven't already, if you haven't downloaded the guide, visit winterreadingguide.com to download your free copy of the 2023 Winter Reading Guide. That's winterreadingguide.com for your free copy of the 2023 Winter Reading Guide. One last time, just in case you missed it, winterreadingguide.com for your free copy of the 2023 Winter Reading Guide. I'll also include a link in the show notes so you can get your copy there. So in the guide, you'll find books in 6 categories, and I've selected 1 book each, 1 standout book from each category to share with you today. So, without further ado, here are the 6 books that I highly recommend you read if you're planning to pick up a few books this winter. So the first book on my list is a romance novel. So if you're planning to just pick up 1 new romance book this season, I highly recommend you read X's and O's by Amy Leah. Now, this book hit bookshelves on January 10th, and in the novel, we meet a romance-obsessed social media influencer who decides to date her exes, except for her recent ex-fiancé, and she's hoping to find her second chance romance. So the name of our main character is Tara Chen. She's a Boston nurse, and she's always been in love with romance novels, and she shares them on her Instagram and TikTok pages. However, her track record with real-life romances was way less successful than the ones she reads about in books. And Tara is just really exhausted with the ups and downs of modern dating. So she decides, you know what, I'm not going to try and find a new relationship or a new date, but instead she's going to go backwards. She's going back to every single one of her ex-boyfriends, and she's hoping she can rekindle something worth pursuing with one of them. Now, she feels motivated because she's witnessed the real-life rekindling of her grandmother Flo's love for a childhood sweetheart. So this is kind of giving her incentive to do this. But also going on for Tara is her new roommate, Trevor. Now, Trevor is a tattooed firefighter with a love 'em and leave 'em kind of mentality. So you can kind of, gather what his dating life is like. And he doesn't like that Tara wants to make friends with his one-night stands. And he really doesn't understand her obsession with romance novels. But despite all that, he decides to be the wingman she needs on her journey to reconnect with her exes. And in true romance novel fashion, the more time they spend together, Tara realizes that maybe the perfect guy isn't one of her ex-boyfriends. So I really enjoyed this book. I love a good second chance romance. There's also a forced proximity trope in there as well. Again, love the fact that our main character is a bookstagrammer and booktalker. And let's be real. The whole concept of dating your exes in real life, that's bonkers, that's crazy. But in this novel, it worked for me, And the same way you probably think that, okay, this whole experiment would just be, it would explode, it just would be crazy. It's just as hilarious as you think it would be. And, Tara starts to wonder if she's giving off this crazy ex-girlfriend vibe, which I was kind of thinking as well. You're going back to go date your exes. So anyway, I loved reading the developing friendship between Tara and Trevor. Their dynamic felt really believable to me, and just overall, I really enjoyed this book. So I'm highly recommending that you read X's and O's by Amy Leah. And if you read The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang or First Comes Like by Alicia Rai, I don't remember how you say her last name, so I'm super sorry. But if you liked either of those two books, I really think you'll appreciate X's and O's by Amy Leah. Okay, book 2. The second book on my list that I'm highly recommending you read this winter is a historical fiction novel. Now, this book graced bookshelves on January 10th, and it's entitled The Night Travelers by Armando Lucas Carrera. Again, apologies on the name if I'm butchering it, but I really enjoyed this historical fiction novel. My elevator pitch for this one is that in this novel we meet 4 generations of courageous women, and we see them navigating love, loss, war, and hope in the aftermath of World War II in Germany and the Cuban Revolution, and we even see the Berlin Walls fall in this novel. So there are major historical events that have happened. We're not just focusing on one, we're just seeing the ripple effects and just life with these 4 generations of women. And it was just incredibly profound to me. I will remember these women for some time now. And in the novel, so things start off in Berlin in 1931, and we meet a poet, Ali, and she gives birth to her daughter, Lilith, who she has with a jazz musician, Marcus, who happens to be a black German man. Now, Marcus goes missing, and as Germany marches towards war, Ali fears that Lilith will be targeted by the Nazis because of her skin color, so she begs her Jewish neighbors who are heading to Cuba to take 7-year-old Lilith with them. So we see Lilith going to Cuba. We see her adapting to life in Cuba with this new family. And while there, she befriends someone called Martin, and they eventually marry. But then we discover Martin has some allegiances with Batista's government, which puts him in danger when Castro comes to power. Now, we see Lilith arranging for Nadine to leave Cuba to head to the US, where she is adopted by an American couple. So throughout the novel, we're seeing several descendants throughout this family. all these women grappling with, the scars and the effects of war. And we also see conversations on motherhood and racism and survivor's guilt. And I was just really fascinated by the fact of how the novel really dives deep into those factors that really shape identity. And there's also the theme of memory, and unresolved memory, like how did this really happen? What really transpired? But anyway, the novel jumps forward to years later now, where we see Nadine attending a college in Germany. And while working there in Berlin, we see her interest in her heritage come up so now she's interested in looking into her birth mother, the early years. And I think as she is going through, this journey of discovering her family, you really feel, because for me this was extremely palpable, the sacrifices made by all these women for their children's survival. And, the pacing of the novel just kind of kept me turning the pages, because I wanted to know what happened, what were the feelings, what transpired with these women, what made them make the decisions they decided to make, while also watching Nadine come to terms with the information she's discovering. So I really enjoyed this book because, it's a multi-generational story, and that's something I gravitate towards. It's a very narrative novel, and, you have sections spanning Havana to Berlin from 1931 to 2015, so this is a novel that spans a great deal of time. I think where this novel shines, though, is through the characters. These characters are complex, they're richly drawn. Through them we see how history unfolds in complex ways, because it's not really straightforward. I know it's easy for us, in the present day to kind of look back and just, form opinions, but within, seeing these women and being in their psyche, we kind of see just how complex things are. And how things change because, of passing time, and also how much things remain the same. So again, really enjoyed this book. So I'm highly recommending you read The Night Travelers by Armando Lucas Carrera. If you read We Were the Lucky Ones by Georgia Hunter, or The Tattooist of Auschwitz by Heather Morris, I think you'll gravitate towards this book. So I really hope you'll give it a try. One last time, it's entitled The Night Travelers by Armando Lucas Carrera. All right, book 3 on my list is Mommy by Jessica George. Now, this book will be gracing bookshelves tomorrow, January 31st. So if you're listening to the podcast on Monday, when the episode drops, this book will be hitting bookshelves tomorrow. So Mommy by Jessica George is a coming-of-age novel about a mid-20-something British Ghanaian woman who, after tragedy strikes, is forced to reassess her life. Now, in the novel, we meet Maddie Wright, and she is a people pleaser. She's that person in her family who's always reliable, always dependable, and as such, she earns the nickname Mommy, which translates meaning woman, but what it really means is that, she's the responsible one in her family. Now, Maddie, she's 25 years old. She works a full-time job that she finds incredibly unsatisfying. But at the same time, she's caring for her father, who unfortunately is in the late stages of Parkinson's disease. So, again, full-time job, caring for her father, and at her job, which she finds unfulfilling, she also has to deal with being the only black person at her job, oftentimes the only black person in rooms, and just all the microaggressions that comes from it. Now, let's look at the rest of her family. Her older brother, James, he lives his life as he pleases. So again, Mommy's being the responsible one, and he's out here essentially living his best life. And her mother spends lots of her time back in Ghana. Now, Maddie's really struggling. Some of which for Maddie includes panic attacks, plus she's also experiencing and going through grief. And where her social life is concerned, that's completely non-existent. But Maddie's mother finally comes back to take care of her father, and then Maddie takes this opportunity to move into a flat with some roommates, and these roommates are determined to help Maddie live her best life, finally. And they have a list of things for her to do to kind of live her best life. Maddie's finally getting some independence. But then unfortunately, tragedy strikes two places, at home and at work. And now she's forced to kind of confront everything that's going on in her life. I feel she really starts to ask herself in the novel, like, how should I really be treated? How do I want to be treated? And how do I deserve to be treated? This book, Mommy, by Jessica George, it's in the reading guide under novels with themes of family and friendship, because this is very heavy on the family, but also, there are themes of friendship in there as well. I love this book because I love a good coming of age story. It's a story of family, which I love. It's really a book about questioning your duty to your family, but also your duty to yourself. Because at the end of the day, you need to live a life that you are happy of and proud of, but there's also that responsibility of family, and that's something I could heavily relate to. We also see how cultural barriers can stand in the way of understanding and treating mental health. I think that's a very important thing to discuss. And yeah, generally, I just felt like Maddie was an unforgettable character. She's a character you want to cheer for and you want to see her do well. And just watching her blossom was really delightful to kind of witness. So I highly recommend you read Mommy by Jessica George. When I was thinking about novels that this was similar to, the novel that came to my mind first was Hope and Glory by Jandela Benson. And if you haven't read that one, I really encourage you to read that one as well. That one was just really, really well done. Jandela also participated at the Epigraph Literary Festival, or inaugural event, in April 2022, and I think these two books are very similar. Also, if you read The Other Black Girl by Zakiya Delia Harris, I think that's it, or Delilah Harris, Zakiya Delilah Harris, maybe. Anyway, sorry if I got the name wrong, but if you read The Other Black Girl, which I remember that was like a major book club selection pick, I think you'll appreciate Mommy. But either way, I hope you give Mommy a go. This is a novel by Jessica George. Okay, book 4 on my list is my literary fiction pick in the reading guide for the Minimalist list. And this book will be available on February 7th. And the novel is entitled Hungry Ghost by Kevin Jared Hossein. Again, I'm really bad with the names. I try to find audio where I can hear someone saying the name so I can get it right, but just sometimes that doesn't work out. But the name of the book is Hungry Ghost, and I absolutely loved it. This is a Caribbean novel from a Caribbean writer, and I love reading these stories so much. They're just so rich, so really appreciated this one. So Hungry Ghost is set in 1940s Trinidad, and it's an immersive story, really immersive, really richly drawn story of two families colliding and the chilling mystery at the center of how their lives are interconnected. So I would pitch this one as a literary thriller, but it's a very literary novel, okay? This is not a thriller in the traditional sense. It's very literary. And we get transported to just a very divided country of Trinidad in the 1940s. Now, in the novel, we meet a landowner, and his name is Dalton. And he makes a lot of money through sketchy kind of ways, and it's tied to some sort of criminal activity. Let me just say that. Now, his wife, Marley, doesn't have the facts of this, or she doesn't know the exact details, but she can kind of pick up a vibe that, things are kind of sketchy. So when Dalton goes missing, as her husband, she starts to worry that maybe, he's been killed. But then she receives a ransom note, and then she's like, okay, he's been kidnapped and these people want money. And these people are actually trying to intimidate her. They prowl around the property at night. So Marley asks for help. So she asks for one of the farmhands who lives on the property to guard the house at night. Now, I appreciated that we got to get Hans's point of view, and we get to know him. And he is living a complete opposite life from Marley and her husband. Hans has spent his entire life in poverty, and he actually lives in the barracks alongside his wife, Shweta, and their 2 sons. Again, 1940s Trinidad, and their home, which is the barracks, is on an old sugarcane estate. And let's be very clear, this is not like, a nice little home on the property. It's rat infested, it's leaking, and it's actually a multi-family dwelling. Yeah, they share it with 5 other families. And Hans's wife, Shweta, she's desperate to leave. And when Marley asks Hans to, help guard the house at night and stuff, it comes with an offer of money. And this could be the opportunity for them to finally be able to buy their own bit of land and, hopefully have a home that is much better than the situation where they're in now. So again, very literary novel, but I think it's a very rich novel. So if you're someone who loves storytelling, loves great writing, who is invested in the characters more than the end result, I highly recommend you pick up this book. It's very literary. It has a side of noir and thriller in there. The novel has themes of colonialism, classism, and there's also hints of the American occupation in Trinidad during World War II, which I really appreciated reading bits about. Ultimately, though, this is a story of survival, and I just think this book is just brilliant. I don't know what else to say about it except read it. Pretty please read it. I think it's a really great book. I don't want to spoil it, so I'm not going to say much more, but I highly recommend you pick up Hungry Ghost by Kevin Jared Hostein. Again, apologies on the name. Now, thinking of comparables, I really wanted to find books that are Caribbean as well. And a book that came to mind was How the One-Armed Sister Sweeps Her House by Sherry Jones. I think that was a book club pick. Yeah, maybe Good Morning America. I'm not sure. I don't remember. But that book, if you enjoyed that book, and again, that book was a heavy book, okay? It's not an easy read. But if you got through that book and on the other side kind of had an appreciation for maybe a different to you story or insight on something, I recommend you give this one a try. Another Caribbean book as well is Here Comes the Sun by Nicole Dennis Benn. If you read that one and had an appreciation for it as well, I highly recommend you give Hungry Ghost a try. Okay, book 5 on my list is my mystery and thriller selection. This one comes out February 21st, so get your pre-orders in, request it from your local library, get in that hold line early, because this is a good one. So the mystery and thriller novel I'm recommending is The Writing Retreat by Julia Bartz. Now, as the name suggests, it has to do with writing and authors, and, you can infer that from the title alone. But in the novel, we meet an aspiring novelist attending an exclusive writing retreat with a book deal prize at stake. However, when she gets to the retreat, she finds that she might have to focus on her survival more as opposed to writing the book when one of the participants disappears. So that's kind of the elevator pitch for it. So there are 5 writers in this book that are competing. They're at this retreat for 4 weeks, and there's a 1 million book deal up for grabs for the lucky winner. Unless, of course, they disappear. So in the book, we meet our narrator, Alex, who is an aspiring writer who idolizes this other feminist horror writer called Rosa. So she's super excited when Rosa says, "Hey, I want you to come to this exclusive all-female writing retreat at her remote estate." So upon arriving, Alex meets the other 4 folks who are invited, and they're all supposed to come up with an idea and come up with an idea for a book, and they're supposed to complete the book in the next 28 days. And Rosa, she will eliminate anyone who doesn't make their daily word count. And the winner at the end, Rosa's editor will get published the best manuscript and pay the author $1 million advance. So that's what's up for stakes. That's what's up for grabs. That's what's at stake. So I kind of gravitated to it because, it's like a competition kind of retreat. I love a good competition, just like I love a good competition show. And because I just recently watched The Traitors, which is on Peacock right now, and that whole competition kind of vibe, I'm like, yes, that's kind of the energy I'm getting. Remote estates, although that Scottish estate wasn't like completely remote, but you get my point if you've watched the show. So that's kind of the energy I got reading this book. And our main character, Alex, right, starts a fictionalized account of an unsolved death of the builder of the actual home where they are, that whole estate, and his wife, who was into, dark things. I'm not going to say, so you're just going to have to read it. And the story for Alex just kind of flows through her, you know what I mean? Like the story's being told to her, like it's channeling through her, and she's just flowing. The words are coming. But then, things start to happen, and one of the participants disappears during a blizzard. And Alex starts to wonder, hey, should I kind of, focus more on what's going on here in this house and surviving as opposed to writing this book? So it's a mystery and a thriller. I can't really go much further in there, but you kind of get the vibe. So it's a thriller about an author at a writing retreat. There are gothic vibes in this book, which I absolutely love. The retreat is kind of up there with those cultish books and cultish clubs out there. It was very twisty, as a thriller should be. The characters were incredibly well done, in my opinion. I think what really pushed this novel over the edge for me is seeing Alex's writing, seeing excerpts of that, because we kind of see her through her work, and we kind of see as the gears are turning in her head, and it's coming through in her writing as well. We see her getting paranoid. We see her mindset shifting. So it's like being witness to all that was just, in my opinion, great. And like I said, it's right up there with those cultish clubs and books. So when I thought about the writing retreat, of course, I thought about the TV series The Traitors, but in the bookish world, The Club by Ellery Lloyd, which was a Reese's Book Club pick. If you read that book and you enjoyed it, then I think you should give The Writing Retreat a go. I also think this book is similar to Please Join Us by Catherine Mackenzie. That book is in a similar vein as well. And if you want to learn more about Please Join Us and Catherine Mackenzie, she was also a participant in the Epigraph Literary Festival. So we have clips about her talking about the book. I'll include it in the show notes. So you can learn more about that novel as well. But I highly recommend, if you read only just one mystery and thriller this season, let it be The Writing Retreat by Julia Bartz. Okay, book 6 on my list, the last book on my list, is my science fiction and fantasy selection. This book will be available February 28th, and the book I'm recommending you read is The Magician's Daughter by H.G. Parry. I absolutely adored this book. It's set in the early 1900s, and we meet a sheltered young woman who is caught between two worlds, and she's going to brave quite a bit of evils to kind of save her family. So this is a 19th century historical fantasy meets coming of age story at the same time. So it's just the perfect mashup, and I really enjoyed it. So in the novel, we meet 16-year-old Bridget. She's called Biddy, and she's lived her entire life in a crumbling castle on a hidden, enchanted island. And she lives there with her adoptive father, the Irish woodmage Rowan. Now, the island they live on is hidden by ancient magic, so it's a perfect home for Biddy, and her guardian is a bit eccentric too, so it's just kind of perfect for both of them. Now, her guardian, he won't say why they are hiding out on this island, specifically why he's hiding out there. And she's kind of, curious. She wants to know what's going on, but also she wants to leave the island. It's kind of reminiscent of someone wanting to leave home, right? So as Biddy nears her 17th birthday, she starts to kind of feel that itch to go. She has a bunch of questions. She's wondering, why won't he let her go to the mainland? What does he do when he disappears? Because she notices, he takes some mysterious trips off the island. What is he doing? And is the story of how she came to be in Rowan's life even true? And through the book, we see Biddy leaving the island. She goes to London, and she's basically told everything about her life up to that point has been a lie. But we see kind of, Biddy coming around and helping Rowan fight off his enemies. And we see her kind of come to terms that, people are a bit more complex than they seem. So again, 19th century historical fantasy with lots of coming of age elements. So it's a coming of age story at its core. What I loved about this book is the magic system, the fact that it was super easy to understand. Sometimes you go into a fantasy and the whole system of that world is super complex. No, this is super easy to understand. The world building was fantastic. I love the settings, especially those of the island. Beautiful, beautiful. It was really delightful and whimsical, and I just loved reading about it. But I think this novel shines through with the characters. They were beautifully and richly drawn, and I think that's where this novel shines. So I highly, highly recommend you give The Magician's Daughter by H.G. Parry a go. Now, when I was thinking of comparables, the first person that came to my mind was Alex E. Harrow. So if you read The 10,000 Doors of January, give this one a go. Also, Gods of Jade and Shadow by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. Highly recommend you give The Magician's Daughter a go if you loved either of those two books. So readers, I really hope you discovered some new books today and that, you feel inspired to pick up a book or two from my list of 6 books to read this winter. Again, if you haven't already, download the Winter Reading Guide. The guide has a total of 18 books. There are 3 books in 6 categories, but we only selected 1 book from each category to make the Minimalist Reads list, and 1 book from each category was shared here in the 6 books to read this winter. So if you're looking for even more new books to read, I highly recommend you download your copy of the guide. It's free. Visit winterreadingguide.com to download your free copy of the Winter Reading Guide. That's winterreadingguide.com for your free copy of the Winter Reading Guide. And just in case you're driving or doing something else right now, I'll include a link in the show notes so you can sign up there. So readers, that's it. That's all for now. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for listening, and I'm looking forward to talking with you again soon. Bye for now. Thank you so much for listening to the Reader's Couch podcast. Please subscribe to the show, share it with a friend, and take a few seconds to leave a rating and review. Until next time, stay lounging, stay reading, and whenever you're in doubt, go straight to your local bookstore or library. Thanks again for listening, and happy reading.